Hello Internet, welcome to the channel. My name's Frankie, and in today's video we are looking at how to fill gaps in your zoos. For all of my fellow zookeepers who find themselves with lots of gaps and empty spaces when they're enjoying building big, beautiful habitats, this is a video for you. A few tips and tricks on how I like to fill some gaps, just to make the zoo feel a bit more fleshed out and a little less lost. So let's not hang about, let's move on to the very first one on how to fill some fairly larger gaps, and that is of course by building a habitat. One of the simplest and potentially most enjoyable ways of filling in these gaps in your zoos is to make smaller habitats. This is Primate Isles, my primate sanctuary that I'm building at the moment, and I have done quite a few habitats now where I'm just filling in gaps. What you see at the moment is the lemur habitat, the red ruff lemur habitat that I built about a week ago now. You can see it in my videos. I will put a link up at the top right now. And I've also done a flamingo habitat in this same way as well. And something that it does for you is it gives you really interesting shapes for your habitats. I personally feel like if you have square habitats, your zoo can look a little bit boring. But if you're using your paths and all that, adapting to the habitats you're already building, you're going to end up with these really weird shapes, and it's going to feel a lot more organic and as if though the zoo actually exists. Because things are being built on a whim kind of when it comes to zoos. There is obviously an initial plan, but they're always expanding. Every few years, sometimes, like for some zoos, they'll be adding habitats and stuff, and they kind of just have to fit in, you know? So you do get these rather organic shapes to the habitats, and this is an excellent way to get that. And of course it kind of forces you to use some smaller animals. You might be somebody that really enjoys using the large animals, these big showstoppers, but every now and then it can be a good idea to bring it back a little bit and build for something that is smaller and different to what you normally build for. It's going to kind of push your creativity, and if that's what you're after when you're building, if you really want to grow and learn, then just varying what you do is going to help a lot. So filling in these gaps using habitats that you wouldn't normally build is really going to help you get better as a builder, especially like if you're quite I guess intentional with it. For instance, with this lemur habitat, I wanted to try a new thing, which was to create a viewing gallery with kind of a canopy to it. And if you can decide on just one thing that you want to build that is new to you each time you build a habitat, then you are going to grow massively, and it won't feel like that hard work. If you're going for huge, ambitious scale projects every single time you do one, then it is going to end up feeling a little bit draining, and as if though every single habitat kind of really takes out of you. But if you can approach it like this, where you're just doing one thing that is new, then you're going to kind of increase your arsenal quite a bit, and it's going to be very beneficial to the range of buildings that you can create going forwards without it feeling too overwhelming. So experimenting on these smaller habitats like this is a perfect opportunity to do so. My next suggestion on how to fill gaps in your zoos is to look at what guest facilities you're missing. By using heat maps, you can understand where in your zoo guests start to get thirsty or hungry, and then get an idea of where to put your shops and stuff in order to kind of quench their thirst or fill their hunger. And something that I discovered when doing this in Primate Isles is that up on the northern side of it, we are a little light on the shops. There's some shops at the entrance, and then over by the penguins there is 2 shops as well, but it's quite a walk to get to either of these areas. So I decided to create a small plaza, and when I say small, I really do mean it. I am just using 2 of the blueprints from the conservation pack, as I believe that they really fit the aesthetic of this zoo so far, and I'm just going to pop a few shops in them. I'm going for 1 food, 1 drink, and then 1 shop, which I believe was the balloon shop. And then we're going to activate our grid when we're building our path to create a small kind of plaza. And annoyingly, because of how I've placed the shops, it does take a little bit of work in order to link them up, and I end up with not so clean a looking plaza area, which is kind of annoying. But one way to remedy that is just to cover the edges in plants and decorations. You can really help to blend it in with the surroundings, and kind of distract from the fact that it's a little bit messy. So that is the kind of thing that I like to do when I am building these plaza areas if it doesn't go quite according to plan. I could have made it go more according to plan if I had just built the 2 shops on the same grid, because then I could have aligned the path to that grid. But they were on 2 separate alignments, which meant that the path was never going to marry up perfectly. But oh well, like I said, I found a solution on how to fix it. I'm pretty happy with it. I'm also going to pop a few benches down and some bins to ensure that our guests aren't littering after going to these 2 shops. And something to bear in mind when you're placing down your shops in your zoos, you want to make sure that there are some trash cans and some bins leading away from those shop areas around the surrounding portion of the zoo, because otherwise after somebody's gone and got a drink or something, they are probably just going to drop that on the floor. Then you've got litter everywhere, and that has a negative impact on our guests' experience, which is not something that we want. This whole little shop area is being built between the orangutans, chimpanzees and the cassowary, which I built for in the last episode of this series. And if you didn't see it, please consider going to give it a watch, because it is one of my favourite habitats I've built. I really enjoyed creating such a thick, luscious kind of jungle for these animals. But with the knowledge of those animals being so close to the shopping area, I'm going to create a little nature scene and then plop a couple of those statues on top to try and tie it into the surrounding area a little bit. And as you can see, I'm using a range of small plants to fill in the gaps between the paths, just to make it look a lot less lost and blend it in a little bit and just make it seem a bit more natural. And by the time that I'm finished doing this, this area does blend into the surrounding part of the zoo really nicely. It looks like it fits and that it was made for this area, despite the fact that I just came up with it on the spot. This wasn't part of a plan or anything. It was just I saw a gap and I wanted to fill it whilst meeting some of my guest needs that up until this point had kind of been neglected. I must admit, when it comes to shops and stuff, that's definitely something that I kind of struggle with my zoos. Trying to keep on top of that, it can be a little bit difficult for me. I do tend to kind of forget about it and then end up just cramming them in at the last minute. But if I could be a bit more mindful moving forwards, I can have small areas like this and it'll work nicely. Now, the last thing that I like to do, and this is for smaller areas, as you can see this is right outside the lemur habitat that we were looking at earlier, is to build little nature scenes. And what do I mean by this? I mean having a lovely display of local flora, loads of different plants and stuff, but also having a bit more of a focal point, which normally comes in the form of a statue. You see this kind of thing done a lot in real life zoos, and it is a really nice way to add that organic, natural feeling to your zoo, having a lush coverage of plants and stuff, whilst adding that kind of fun creativity as well by having the statues out and about as well. You can see here I am using some of the Indonesian style statues to build the gibbon. I believe this was from the Tropical Pack, if I remember correctly. And this is my basic, I'm going to say, blueprint for creating a nature scene. I will make a small outcropping of rocks, a nice little cluster, and then I will choose a statue that I like that represents some animals that are nearby or something, and pop that in the middle of the stones. Then either side I can use some larger plants that rise up around the edge to really direct your eye towards the center where it dips down and you have your statue, and then around the base of these plants to make sure we have a nice bit of ground coverage. I'm going to use some smaller bushes and ferns and stuff just to make sure that we're not getting the horrible grass texture, but instead something that we want. And it can be really effective. You can have things as small or as big as you like when it comes to these nature scenes, but it just adds quite a bit to your zoo. I did this at the very beginning of the zoo, not the beginning of the construction, but near the entrance. I mean, we have a massive roundabout, which is lovely. I will link to a video where I built that as well. And yeah, I hope you found this video useful. These are my 3 tips for filling gaps in your zoos. If you have any tips of your own, leave them in the comments. Let's share the knowledge throughout the community. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel to see more like this appearing in your subscription feed. Thank you for watching, and till next time, I'll see you later.